thank you, Dr. Mike. That's a very nice introduction. A banker and did you say a banker and a pastor?
And a businessman.
And a businessman.
Right.
So I can get into your heart and I can get into your pocket. Thank you so much for attending, for watching this. We just appreciate you so very much, and I am really happy to be here today. This is very exciting for me. I want to tell you, I've developed a fascination of angels, and also I've developed a fascination of people who have visited heaven. And I don't know if you've ever read about people that have died on the operating table, or they've been in the hospital, and they visit heaven. And sometimes it lasts for a minute, but sometimes it lasts for a couple hours. And it's very intriguing for me. And the reason it's intriguing is that they say there's about 40,000 people that have had this experience. And so, of course, I haven't visited 40,000 people to hear their testimony, but it was amazing. Never once did they ever say anything about seeing angels in heaven. Never once did they ever say that an angel came to me, but they did. Every single one of them said that God came to them and brought them so much love that they just could not understand the love that God had for them, and it changed their lives forever by visiting God. But I was thinking about angels. If nobody has seen them in heaven, they all must be down here on the earth, trying to take care of us. But I was thinking about this situation. I have been involved in many, many churches and nice situations and terrible situations. I want to tell you about one church in particular that they lost their total integrity. It happened to be a church of about 28,000 people. The pastor had been there probably 35 years, well known around the country, and he began to do things that a pastor shouldn't do. He began to get very friendly with the ladies at church and with his ladies on the staff. So the ladies began to complain, but the pastor didn't do anything about it. He continued his antics. And so what happened was they got the board at the church, and they told the board exactly what was going on. And the board said that we would investigate this, and they did all the investigating, and they talked to the pastor. And the pastor said, well, he's just pastoring a church. He didn't know anything about these extracurricular activities that they were accusing him of. And so the board decided that the pastor should stay there. There was nothing going to be done to the pastor. But the ladies were very, very upset. Well, there were about a half a dozen ladies on the staff. And then all of a sudden, some ladies came forward from the church. And they went to the board again, and they said, you've got to do something with the pastor. And so the board decided that they wouldn't do anything. So the ladies went to the pastor's daughter, who was actually the senior pastor. She was number 2 in charge. And they explained to her what was going on. And she said, well, she would look into it. And she never answered them back. And so it came to the point that somehow the press heard about this, the newspaper. And they wrote a very scathing article. And I was thinking about the angels that are protecting us and what they talk about and what they do. And, I don't know, do you remember years ago, you at the office you had a water cooler? And this was before computers and before emails and before texts. All you had was a telephone and you had the water cooler. And if you wanted to find out anything about your company or anybody doing anything in the company, you went down to the water cooler. So I was thinking, well, you know what? Maybe all these angels get together at the water cooler once in a while, and they talk about their people that they're watching over. And so one of the angels says to his other group there, he says, I've got a situation with a pastor. It's been going on for years, and I really don't know what to do. And they said, well, tell us the story. So he told them a story about what's going on with the pastor. And they said, well, this is really getting serious, and we think you better talk to God about this and see what he says. So the angel went to God, and he told him the story. God said that, well, okay, I'll take care of it, and things will be okay. Well, it was just amazing. The very next day, God told everybody. And so they had a very disturbing meeting at the church, and they dismissed the whole board because the board had not acted properly with the pastor and the ladies there. And I keep thinking about the integrity of the pastor. He's a great man. Everybody knows him in the whole country. And the integrity he lost was dramatic for himself, but you know, it affected so many people. It was like an iceberg. We see the tip of the iceberg, and that was the pastor, but everything below that was the results of his not having any integrity. And so as the story continued, the board decided to hire an outside source. And we could get an outside source to come in with credibility, and they could interview everything that's going on. And so they did, and they came in, and after a few months, the investigators said, you know, every single story that we heard from every single person at that church is credible. So they had to let the pastor go the very next day. But the most amazing thing is, when you jeopardize your integrity, whether it means in the family or the church or your friends, it affects so many people. But let me tell you how this affected thousands of people in just one day. I would attend a conference every single year at his church, and it was a worldwide conference with over 100,000 people attending. It was broadcasted all around the world. Churches would have their sanctuaries turned over to the video screens, and they would video this all over the country. And so all of a sudden the churches began to cancel, and this was 1 week before the conference. And the main speaker of the conference was Denzel Washington, and he called a week before the conference and says, I cannot be your guest speaker, I cannot be your main speaker. And that same day, about 6 major leaders around the country, CEOs and presidents of very large corporations that were Christians, they all backed out of that conference. Now you can imagine a conference that big, it takes years to plan. You have to plan for food, you have to plan for advertising, you have to plan for so many things. And I'm just a very small part of that whole area under the iceberg. I had all my display equipment coming. I had purchased I had to pay $3,000 for my display area, and there were 50 other organizations that paid the same amount of money. People had their airplane tickets. People had changed their holidays. People had brought their families so they could vacation during this time. Just amazing how that affected everybody. And so my thought is that even though one person loses his integrity, it just so dramatically affects everybody. Particularly in churches where we're such a tight community. And so I went on the internet the other day just to confirm all my facts that I had picked up that I would tell you. And as I was scrolling down, I could not believe this, and it just broke my heart, that one church 7 miles away from this church, of a member of, they had over 12,000 members, the exact same thing happened, just absolutely in duplicate because of the pastor. So I pray for those pastors, I pray for those people. But it's really amazing how you can honor yourself and you honor your church and you honor God, and your integrity is just so important for your family. I want to tell you, in my family, I have 14 great-grandchildren, and they're about this tall, and they come up right to there. And what I do is I send them a card in the mail every holiday that comes along. This happens to be, believe it or not, this is coming up Halloween. I get every one of them a little card, and I send this in the mail to them. And I write a little note in there, and this one happens to go to Noah. Hi, Noah. Grandpa loves you, and so does God. and I put, this is my little signature. He can't read a signature. All my little grandkids know that face. Oh, that's Grandpa Larry. And the fun part is that children do not receive mail, ever, unless you send them something. And if you send your grandchild a little card like this is the report I've been getting back for years. My granddaughters say, Grandpa, this is so amazing. My daughter got your card, and she carries it around. For 3 days, she carried that card around because she never received mail before. And I have another granddaughter who says, Grandpa, my grandson, or my son, keeps a little shoebox, and he's got about a dozen of your cards. He carries those cards with him. He plays with them. Another granddaughter said, Grandpa, my son takes this card to bed with him about 3 days after he gets his card. So I'm encouraging you to become active with your grandchildren or your children and send them a little card and do something like that so they'll know who it's from. But my kids, they love that. It's just, it's fun to do that. Also, if you go to a garage sale and you happen to run across an old dictionary, if you look at the word enthusiasm in the dictionary, it will say God from within, but it has to be a really old dictionary. Because if you find your new dictionary, you look up the word enthusiasm, and that word, it says a feeling. So it's amazing how dictionaries change. And I was just thinking, you know, maybe possible this word integrity could possibly change, and in 20 years, 30 years, it may not even be in a dictionary because they take out words and they put words in every single year. But in this program, or in this, I have some friends that wrote a book. It was on governance, and it was part of the, going to be part of the conference. They wrote the book, they published it, and they had it ready to release the week, of course, that the pastor got fired. But in the book, they took several quotes from this pastor and they put it in their book, all through the book. He's a very intelligent man, very godly man. And so they used his quotes. And they decided, you know what? We can't use this book. We can't be associated with this man and give him all these accolades, what he has just done. So they had to pull their book the day before the conference. And they invested thousands and thousands of dollars in this book. So that was just another thing that happened. So your activities really control people's thoughts and minds and hearts, and integrity is so important. That's the only thing we have, is integrity. And I want to thank you very much. Thanks for attending this conference too.
Thank you, Brother Larry.